Using an analogy relating to watering plants, I'm going to teach you how your central heating system functions. So the idea is I have this piece of guttering here, and this white circle represents a hole that I'm going to cut out. I'm not going to cut out the one hole, I'm going to cut out a series of holes down the length of the guttering. Then the guttering is going to be laid at an angle with a plant pot placed under each hole. Water will be poured in at the high end, and as it passes over a hole, the water will drop down onto the plant, watering it. Great. Now the problem is, if the holes are all as large as this one, only the first few plants are going to be watered. The water is going to fall through the large holes, leaving none for the remaining. We can overcome that by reducing the size of the holes. Specifically, if we start by putting a really small one at the beginning, and they slowly grow in size to the point where the last one is much larger, what will happen is the water will flow down, and each of them hopefully will receive the same amount of water. These won't be thirsty enough to take all of the water, and these, as they get larger, they get more opportunity to take the remaining water. So each of the plants will be watered in unison. Great. The next problem, however, is each of the plants require a different moisture level to be happy. If they're watered too much, they can wilt and die just as much as if they didn't receive any water at all. So to combat this, we can install a magic tap. At the end of these pipes, if we install a tap, these taps track the moisture content of each of these plants, and as they begin to get watered, the tap slowly turns down, and once they reach their optimum level of moisture, it cuts out. Brilliant. This has the added benefit of, even if I haven't cut these holes correctly and some are too big, some are too small, after these first few plants have got up to their moisture level and the taps are turned off, there's more water remaining for the rest of the plants. So eventually, all of them will be watered to the correct level. How does this relate to central heating? Well, these moisture levels actually relate to room temperatures. Now, on your radiators, if you have a TRV, which are the little caps which you can rotate, and they have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and sometimes a frost setting, 1 typically relates to 10 degrees, and each jump upwards is a 5-degree jump. So that means 2 is 15 degrees, 3 is 20 degrees, 4 is 25 degrees, and 5 equals 30 degrees. So if you look at these plants again, a plant of this size could be maybe your living room. You've set it to 3.5. That's going to be somewhere between 20 and 25 degrees. This little plant set to 1, that's only going to be 10 degrees. That could be perhaps an upstairs bedroom that's no longer in use, or perhaps a conservatory that you don't wish to heat up over the winter, or just an unused room. And then you may have some other, 2.2 and 2.5, that's going to be somewhere between 15 and 20 degrees. So maybe you want your bedrooms around 17, 18 degrees. That's how that works. So if I put a little radiator here, these holes are basically, this is a lock shield cap. Beneath this is a lock shield. You can adjust those, and that's the equivalent of opening and closing these holes. So when people talk about having a well-balanced system, they have these holes set up, much like this watering system. They have them adjusted so that when the water, or in our case hot water, is sent around the central heating system, it reaches all of the radiators at the same rate, and the radiators can evenly heat up. As I mentioned earlier, the great thing is that even if your radiators aren't well balanced, if your TRVs are adequately set on each radiator, what will happen is, let's say the upstairs bedrooms, well, they're on the end of the road. Let's say your living room. Once your living room's up to temperature, your TRVs will stop any further heat coming into that radiator being released into the room. That means there's more heat in the system available to the rest of the rooms. So it has a knock-on effect. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's typically advised that at least one radiator in your house doesn't have a TRV. And if they do have TRVs, the room in which your thermostat's located should be fully set to open. And that's so the radiator doesn't stop giving out heat whilst the thermostat is still calling for it. Otherwise, you may find that your boiler is running, and the room it's in, the room that the thermostat's in, never reaches temperature. So for this reason, if your thermostat's in the hallway or in your living room, have it open so that the room can get up to temperature and the boiler can stop being called for heat.